What's up, guys? EJ Stewart here, joined by Shamari Stewart. Thank you for checking out this edition of our Young Justice episodes recap and review show. Today, we're talking about season 4, episode 19, Encounter Upon the Razor's Edge. And Shamari, this was quite a stunning episode for many reasons, but one being the combining of the canon between not just Young Justice, but now the Green Lantern animated series, which was a series that came out in the early 2010 2011 era of Cartoon Network, a very critically acclaimed show. And we saw that canon combined with the introduction of the character Razer, who only has a prior history in that series. He was introduced in that show. He's a character who's a Red Lantern in that show. And we see his character from that series continued in this episode of Young Justice. Shout out to the writers who wrote this episode, Jim Craig and Giancarlo Volpe. They actually helped work on the Green Lantern animated series. So if you enjoyed that show, which I know a lot of people did, this was a great treat for you. And overall, Sham, I just thought it was an overall fun episode, just in itself. But major development with this edition here with the Green Lantern animated series now becoming canon in the Young Justice episode Earth 13.
Yeah, it's really cool. Now I haven't seen that series. Um, I don't think I watched it in its entirety. If I did, it was so long ago that I don't recall a lot of it. Um, but that is a really cool detail. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, it's kind of reminiscent of when Static Shock showed up in Justice League Unlimited, and it was like basically just confirming that everything that happened in that show is canon here. So I mean, I always love when they do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was really great to see that story. It's funny because I felt like it kind of confirmed a little bit as to why the we see the Green Lantern Corps being a part of this whole
Uh-huh.
arc, and they kind of seemed a bit random as to why they were going to be included, but this episode really kind of drove it home as to why this arc is all coming together. Not necessarily that Razor is going to be a continued part of it, but they wanted to do this kind of solo episode to kind of give a shout out to that series that again a lot of people really enjoyed, and they should really enjoy because as like you, I didn't necessarily watch everything from that series. I kind of tapped out a little bit early. Not necessarily because it wasn't good. It was just I caught on late to how popular that show was. But the fact that we got to see Razor and that they decided to make this canon was just a really kind of neat thing to have in this episode. And I think that it was it's continuing a very interesting arc, and it kind of again shows the versatility of the team of Young Justice that they could pretty much take any corner of the DCEU, or rather the Earth 16 DC universe, and make it great. And now we got Green Lantern canon that is now very fascinating that I would love to see explored in future episodes. We'll see if we actually get that, but just a really kind of crazy kind of introduction to this episode, and seeing it in that manner. Before we get to some of that stuff, we also in this episode, Sham, got a great deal of context to what exactly the deal is with this Legionnaires and Lor-Zod situation that involves Superboy. We thought dying, but now we know he's in the Phantom Zone. And it all came together with essentially what we've seen from Young Justice a lot, which was a more exposition. It starts with we're in Central City. We saw that introduction. I think I don't know if it was the last episode or episode 4 where Saturn Girl and Chameleon Boy go to see Wally. Excuse me, Wally. Bart, and they say hey man, we're gonna need your help. And Bart agrees to help them, but of course, like any smart superhero, he's like, look, I'm not gonna just keep helping you blindly. Like eventually, you're gonna have to tell me what exactly is going on. And we kind of see the same thing happen with Ma'ala Falak. He's now working with Lor-Zod. We saw them, come together, and through Darkseid, of course, introducing everybody. And he's like, look, I need to also know what the hell's going on. Like, yes, I'm not gonna stun on Darkseid and not listen to what he's saying, but you're telling me we're going to do something, but you're not telling me why. So essentially, I need answers. So we end up getting a lot of answers here in regards to what is going on, what is the beef between all of these parties, and it ends up being quite a long story that starts with the death of Krypton. I don't know how you felt, Shan, but that's not necessarily where I thought this story began. It does create an interesting it creates an interesting, I guess, origin for Zod and General Zod, the one that we kind of know and appreciate, because essentially his first real introduction to a lot of these DC heroes is not any kind of beef with Superman. It actually is a beef with the Legion of Superheroes in the 31st century, because we learned that Zod had been imprisoned in the Phantom Zone prior to Krypton being exploded, or essentially, or being destroyed. That of course, it was Jor-El and his brother who said, "Yo, man, this guy's he's trying to do a coup. We can't have this. Get him out of here." And they locked up and imprisoned him, and that was really the last we had seen of him, apparently, for the DC from the DC's perspective, in a long time. And it wasn't until later that he then gets released, basically on time served, because it had been centuries since Krypton had been destroyed, and the people who were in charge said, "Hey, we can't just let somebody just be in prison forever." So they released him, but they put him on a red sun, and that kind of starts the ball rolling in terms of how everything kind of comes into focus for this season. Kind of, what did you make of how this story came together?
I loved it personally. I think they're doing a fantastic job. Um, so the Zod backstory, um, I think it was explained in a very coherent, manner, and it's gripping too. I mean, it's kind of a really kind of a gripping backstory of everything that happened. Um, and I think it's particularly good because you know it's being told from both the Legion's perspective and Lor-Zod's perspective,
Yes.
because they're kind of telling the story at the same time. So you're kind of getting both sides. So it's not exactly painting the Zods out to be, crazy evil people necessarily. It's particularly not from Lore's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even so, we see that they were trapped in the Phantom Zone just for an indefinite period of time.
Yeah.
And I know, for me in particular, when it comes to the use of the Phantom Zone in Superman lore, it's always kind of been, for me, it's been kind of morally ambiguous. Like, is it
Exactly.
humane? Yeah, is it humane for him to use to imprison someone like this here for eternity? I mean, is that a humane punishment for someone? And not really.
Right.
So, I mean, you could see, Laura's frustration, um, with what happened, and especially considering how it happened and the Legion. It makes sense that he would hate the Legion, and it makes sense that the Legion would be like, we can't allow him to do this, to just release this, really just release the Zods and just basically just unleash them on the galaxy, on the universe. So is really cool. Honestly, you know, I think it's adding a lot of very interesting, very cool context to this whole kind of arc right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree that I think that letting Lore tell his story is kind of weird in a way. Is in some ways like he's telling his story unchecked, but like he is kind of being checked because we're also hearing the Legion's part of the story, which is
Yep.
really only from the perspective of the future, and it kind of speaks to,
Yep.
um, you know, like yes, maybe you can't be necessarily always imprisoned and condemned for what you've done in your past, but you are the makers of your future, and we see that eventually Drew Zod and General Zod and his mindset. At the end of the day, he is a bad dude because when he gets a chance to be free and live a normal life, he's on parole, as they say. Like he goes back to say, "Nah, it's about world domination, fam." Like he couldn't just live on Daxam on
Hmm.
a red sun and just be peaceful. Now I think it was interesting that Drew Zod made it sound like Lor-Zod was like, "Yo, this was them basically trying to like keep us from our powers and hold us down." It was a very, I thought, smart way to kind of introduce this concept. But I do like that idea that, hey, something happened all these centuries ago. They were banned forever. Clearly, it was kind of cruel and unusual punishment, given they were just trying to save Krypton. But when they got to be free and they could just live peacefully and nobody bothered them, they all of a sudden still wanted all this smoke. Hence why Jor-El and them got him out of here in the first place. So I just thought it was very compelling overall. What do you make of? the revelation that it is indeed Superboy who is the kind of inspiration behind the Legion. I wasn't necessarily sure if they did a great job explaining necessarily why he is, and maybe we have to get to that event 10 years from now to understand why. But we learned that was something I talked about a bunch of times, and I was ended up being spot on was that I felt like the reason why Superboy was so important to him was because he was the inspiration, not Superman. And there's been a lot of canon and stories with Superman being the inspiration for the Legion, and here we see it was Superboy, and with Superboy being the inspiration for the Legion, it leads Lor-Zod to basically go on this time warping mission to assassinate Superboy so he can get the Legion out of here in hopes that the Zods can do what they want to do, which is rule the galaxy, which is what Chameleon Boy ends up saying that they succeed in doing once Superboy is taken, prematurely, and the timeline is greatly altered.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do find that interesting as well. Um, I mean, and you said that you had predicted this as well, right? That
Yeah,
you had a
yeah,
hunch that
that
Superboy.
was yeah. I was pretty.
Yeah,
I from the beginning. I pretty much was like I'm almost certain Superboy is the reason why the Legion
yeah,
is who they are, and that's why they're so protective of him. I didn't know what happened in the future that made them so protective of him now, like why it was an issue. I mean, my whole prediction was that eventually that he actually didn't get killed, that he was in the future somehow. But now we see, no, he is in the Phantom Zone. But I did believe that he was their inspiration, which is it turned out to be true.
hmm yeah, yeah. I mean, that definitely made seem to make sense. I mean, they were like, kind of following them around and stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
and they say that they say, look, we because we didn't know when Lor-Zod would strike because he had that time sphere, he could stay out of the timeline essentially.
right.
We had to just hang around Superboy this whole time, which is why we have seen those Easter eggs with the Legion. At various points, not just this
Yep.
season, but last season. We were like, what are they doing? But now we know exactly what they have been doing. They had just been essentially like, mystery bodyguards for Superboy throughout this entire last two seasons.
Yep. And I love how they plant the seeds like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really really cool. And just to see the story come together like this is just really awesome, honestly.
Yeah, it was, and this was that scene last year where Superboy announces his kind of identity as a clone and a metahuman. At the United Nations with Superman there, and this was the Legion, stopping what we now know was an assassination attempt by Lor-Zod. Apparently they were to stop it to the point where we didn't actually see what happened. We see everything happening in that picture from the outside, but it shows you that this was a kind of this was a long game, and this was a long journey for the Legion, but one that ended up being fruitful. One that appears that they were only able to be successful doing for about a year or so, because eventually, of course, we see what happened with with them on Mars. Um, Really compelling stuff. So we see what what the Legion thinks happened, and we see what Lor-Zod thinks will happen, which they each think that Superboy is dead, and that Phantom Girl died as well. We know that to not necessarily be true because people in the Phantom Zone aren't dead. Like that's not their fate.
Yep.
They've been sent to the Phantom Zone, but they're not actually dead people, of course, because Zod gets freed and he's running around as Zod in the 31st century. So what do you think actually happened? We haven't gotten that. That's the only part of this picture now that we don't know. Is we know Superboy is not dead, but we know why he was attacked on Mars. We know why the Legion had been around, fishing around, trying to apparently protect him. We know who did it. It was Lor-Zod, and we know why he did it. But we still don't know what exactly happened to him. Do you have any guesses as to what exactly happened to him and why he got to the Phantom Zone?
I mean, I feel like it has to be a combination of something with the girl's powers
Right.
and that device. I'm
Interesting.
thinking it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be the device that went off. I think it's gonna be some kind of crazy kind of techno babble
Mm-hmm.
that's just gonna kind of explain.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just gonna explain like somehow something happened, some kind of neuro something, and just boom, and then next thing you know, they both just get sent to the Phantom Zone. And I think we'll probably also get an explanation of what exactly the Phantom Zone is, because that's going to
Yeah.
come along with that. So
Right.
they're gonna explain this is actually what it is. It's like, some kind of, new realm, quantum realm, or something like that, that they were sent to, um, as opposed to just being dead. So because they're gonna have to explain that as well for it to make sense. So I think that we're gonna get that information also.
Yeah, and that picture that you see, that was Lor-Zod essentially saying, look, man, Mal did all the good work with the bomb, but it was just me, putting that lead encased kryptonite in there to
Right.
finish the job. And that's funny because they in this episode, we see that little flash of green right before the bomb apparently goes off, and
Hmm.
we always assumed it was kryptonite, but it doesn't really make sense. Like, why would because Superboy doesn't get affected in any way. So
Right.
I wonder every time we see that flash of green, I wonder if it's Phantom Girl or some other entity that somehow is stopping them and getting them into getting them out of harm's way, but of course sending them to the Phantom Zone. Um, what is fascinating as well is along with the fact that they all think that Superboy is dead and that he is not dead. We also have this thing with him now in being introduced to General Zod from last week. So you had mentioned last week that you thought that this was perhaps a the Zods kind of all working together, but it looks to me as if from now with knowing more about this picture that Lor-Zod's doing his own thing, and like Drew Zod is just kind of like he's out of the loop. Like he doesn't have any. Like I'm sure he knows Superboy sucks, and we need to get him out of here. And we know that there's going to be beef because now we see that the Legion has had various run-ins with General Zod, and that their inspiration is Superboy. So now we know Superboy is indeed in danger. It's not like he's being encountered by somebody he doesn't know. But
Hmm.
but what do you kind of make of that now new dynamic that will have to be explored in the next episode or so?
I mean, I think it's going to be very interesting. I mean, we know Zod is, very calculating, very dangerous individual. Um, you know, and he's been in this Phantom Zone forever, so he seems to, it would seem that he would have a lot of information, um, that Superboy just doesn't have at this point. So I think it's going to be really interesting. He doesn't seem hostile just yet.
Yep.
I don't know if I mean they're in the Phantom Zone. I don't know if and he's been in there for so long. I don't know if he has any hostility left in him.
That's true too.
While in the Phantom Zone
That
at
is very
least,
good. True. Yeah.
you know. I mean, he probably spent a lot of time hating everything, but you know,
Yeah.
so that'll be interesting to explore as well. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be really interesting. I think it'll be really interesting to see, um, especially when they get out, because I have a feeling they're both gonna get out. So
I think so too. Yeah.
yeah. So I think this is gonna be very interesting.
Let's get to let's get back to what it. First of all, how did you feel about this? This episode kind of had a lot because you're
Hmm.
introducing this whole Razer situation, which is now again bringing a canon from an entirely different show that some people, I can't give you a percentage of how many didn't watch, but I would assume a lot of people, a show that did not, a lot of people did not watch, that they have no affinity to, and you're bringing that in while also trying to then also kind of explain your main story, the main conspiracy behind everything that's going on in this season. Did you feel like this was the right form for them to do that? Because I felt like while I will put out there, I thought this episode was a grand slam. I could see others feeling like this was maybe tough to kind of grapple two different major things happening at once. One major thing that is extremely important, which is the deal with the Zods and Superboy and the Legion, and then another thing that is important just on just a fan service kind of deal, but not necessarily that important to the main story. And that was actually the A story this week. The Zod stuff was the B story. But I felt, doing this episode recap, that it was important to do the other stuff first because that's really why we're following this whole season this year.
Yeah, I thought they handled it really well. I mean,
Mm.
I mean, as I just said, I didn't exactly remember everything that happened, um, with regards to Razor in the series either, but it was still enjoyable to watch. It's
Yes.
still cool to see. We're familiar with very familiar with the Red Lanterns. You may be familiar with the Blue Lanterns as well if you're kind of a Green Lantern,
Hmm.
fan. Um, but um, but yeah, I mean, I thought it was really well done as you can even see in this kind of role here. The art was very well done. It was really cool to see.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it was engaging. So I thought they did a great job with it. Honestly, the story itself, just in general, was very well done. So I think even for those that maybe didn't completely understand everything that was going on, um, I think still did a very good job.
I tend to agree with you on that. That I thought that even if this felt random, and I feel like for those who have no idea anything about Razor or anything, this definitely could have felt random. I felt like it was very well done, and if I had been someone who had no idea about the Green Lantern show or Razor as a character or anything like that, I would be very interested in Razor. I'd feel like I kind of hope to see that guy return in a future season of Young Justice at some point because it seems like by the end he's put over in a major way by being the only red and blue lantern, someone who both wields the powers of hope and rage combined. That's a certain level of power that we've not seen, so the possibilities and the potential that Razor has as an individual is quite enormous because of that. But I thought just seeing his character kind of development just in this episode alone was great. So again, the story, as I said, kind of at the top, centers around this idea that Razor became a Blue Lantern shortly after that season of Young Justice, excuse me, of Green Lantern, the Green Lantern animated series ended. We see, if you're not familiar with that show, essentially, there's kind of a love angle with Aya, who he mentions in the show, who was an AI that's turned into that takes a human form and falls in love with Razor. It's kind of a will they or won't they kind of relationship. And Aya essentially, after saving the world or the galaxy, is quote unquote dies, and Razor is on a quest to find her. Of course, Aya being an AI and stuff, I think he feels like perhaps there's hope out there that he can find her, and that's why this blue ring that you see there uh, finds him. And the Razor that you see in like episode 1 of the Green Lantern animated series is different than the guy who's at the season finale. Like he goes through a lot of growth to the point where it would make sense that he would move away from the anger part of his life, which stems from his wife being killed by Atrocitus. That's why he wields the red ring and why he is a Red Lantern. And he puts that down and to become a Blue Lantern and in this quest to try to find Aya, but we see that it doesn't work. He has lost all hope. That's why he is stranded out there in the middle of nowhere in space, trying to get the new Genesis because he has made this deal with Metron to say, "Look, I'm gonna do this Blue Lantern thing while I go on this quest. I don't want anyone else to have a red ring because they're probably just gonna use it for bad intentions. So I need you to hold on to this ring and keep it in keep it in good safe. He has a whole intersectional vault, I think they call it. You can keep it in your vault, and if I need it again, I'll come back to you for it, or maybe you'll never have to see me because I'll find whatever I'm looking for. So that's the deal that was made. It doesn't come through for Razor. He says that he's reached a bunch of dead ends that led him nowhere, and that is why he is stranded out there in space because he essentially has lost hope. He has lost hope of finding Aya. He's lost hope that this new way of life is it for him, and that he's there now to go to New Genesis to try to make this deal with Metron to get his red ring back, essentially. So that's how they kind of set up this story, Sham. You mentioned how you thought it was well executed. Why did you enjoy this setup?
I mean, like I said, the art, as always, is on point. The animation was on point. The character designs were on point. I liked Razor's Blue Lantern look. I like his Red Lantern look.
Yeah.
The voice acting was on point. And there's just the general story itself. A guy who's searching for a lover or loved one, having trouble finding them, losing hope. Wants to just revert back to rage. It's very interesting. And the
Yeah.
lanterns, the whole kind of lantern, the kind of singular emotional state of the different type of lanterns is always very interesting. So if you're a fan of the Lanterns in general, you probably like this story quite a bit. Um, and then having Metron be a part of the story as well, and his inclusion was good as well. So overall, I just thought it was very compelling.
Yeah, it was very compelling, and you see Metron kind of being the unscrupulous character that he is. You know, when Razor has this meeting with him, say, "All right, man, this isn't worth giving my red ring back." This kind of weird dialogue kind of ensues. You know, he says, "All right, let me go get the ring." He goes and gets the red ring, and as they make the exchange, Metron is telling him about how basically he had been manipulated this entire time, and that he had used Razor essentially as a way to test out and explore the powers of the Red Ring up close and personal.
Mm-hmm.
He sent the blue ring out there to find Razor, and that he was was giving him false clues in his search for Aya as a way to continue his quest to have him eventually lose hope. And once he lost hope, he hoped to then get the blue ring from Razor so that he could then explore the powers of that ring. So this whole time, it was 4 years that he had been exploring the powers of the red ring. He had then hoped that Razor would come back to him. He thought it'd be much earlier, but it shows that Razor is someone who maybe is, we learn, is definitely worthy of a blue ring. Comes back to him years later and says, "Okay, good. Now that I'm finished exploring the red ring's powers, now you're giving me the blue ring, and I can now do studies on the blue ring." Of course, this incenses Razor, as you see there. Now he is fully, in his red ring garb, and he's like, "Well, why are you telling me this?" And he's like, "I want to see you mad. I want to see you take on the Red Lantern mantle, so now I can actually see the full ring and its power in its full potential." So, quite a devious plan here by Metron, and it ensues in a pretty big fight scene that everyone sees. The people at the summit see, the foragers see, and it kind of brings us to eventually our climax scene, which is Razor realizing that this raid that he's now taking part in has injured Forager, the female Forager. I know they're both named Forager. This injured Forager, he looks kind of crazy again, and he realizes that this life ain't it. This life ain't it either, and he don't know what to do at this point. But he doesn't want to be a part of this life again. So you see that Razor has really kind of made that full circle change, and that's when the blue ring, which Razor I think had thought maybe was just a ruse, now realizes that, hey, this blue ring actually is for me. And you get a really cool scene of him after seeing the hope in Forager, and the sadness there, and hoping that everything will be okay. Blue ring finds him. He now becomes the Red and Blue Lantern, which was just a pretty badass thing to kind of see take place. And there you see some of the beautiful shots, like you said, Shamar. I thought the art in this episode was quite spectacular. And he, sends off Metron away with his new powers, and we get kind of a whole new journey now for Razor moving forward as the Red and Blue Lantern. So before we get to some of the stuff that happened in the summit, which I do want to mention real quick, what did you make of kind of just how this story ended up coming together with Razor?
I liked how it concluded. It was like you said, it was really cool seeing him come Red and Blue Lantern. Um, I thought the fight was a little, the fight with Metron in the chair was a little, it was a little bit of Flash against DeVoe, a little bit with him flying around in the chair, and I'm just like, all right, this is, I don't know how I feel about this, but I mean, it was fine. It served its purpose, and it was either way, it was cool to see a fight with a lantern. I haven't seen that in quite a bit, so that was very fun to see. Um, so yeah, it was. I thought it was cool. Honestly, I thought it was really cool. I'm with you. I wouldn't mind seeing him come back either later on this season or in a future season.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that the chair feeling like those DeVoe vibes. I
Yeah.
definitely felt that, but I almost wasn't mad at it because like Metron is like he's such a like I don't know. I'm trying to be respectful to someone who doesn't exist, but but he's such a jackass. I guess is the word that's probably the best way I could say it. Like it actually it worked for his character that he would be flying around in this chair Havoc's being created because what's the name? Razer is now incensed and he's shooting things and blowing things up, and he's just like, "Ooh, interesting data." Like, it's just like you're a jerk, man. So I kind of like the fight was indeed weird, but I actually kind of thought it matched like Metron's energy, and I think that the absurdity of it, I think also like it dawned upon Razer. I think that's what he's like. What am I doing? I'm like chasing some dude in a chair, insensibly because he's saying some stuff I don't like, and I'm hurting people, and I'm back to where I was before, which was no hope and all rage. Like, what am I doing with my life? I thought it as weird as it was, and I agree that it was weird. I thought it still worked in many ways. So they eventually, of course, Rocket and the whole team kind of sees everything that goes down, and Razor is able to heal Forager once he becomes the Red and Blue Lantern, which was also pretty cool to see. He of course restores the statues that were destroyed. I thought it was quite funny that Orion, who once again, as I talked about before, I mentioned that I feel like he may be autistic. He fixes the statue, and of course it's a statue of the High Father and the High Mother, but there are forgers there. It's kind of a they're you don't usually see the bugs immortalized with like the new gods in that nature. Of course, Orion is just like, that's not how this was supposed to be, which I thought was quite funny. But what did you kind of make of some? I thought there was some interesting dialogue in this episode at that summit, where you know we see that is a summit that was called, it seems to be almost by the Justice League, essentially telling the new guys, hey, like this whole deal with these metahumans, the trafficking that's happening now, not just on Earth but throughout the galaxy, is troublesome. We are only so many people. We need help stopping this. And New Gods is basically like, that's not our beef, fam. We have made this pact with Apocalypse and with Darkseid, this truce that we're not going to interfere in each other's affairs for the sake of peace for our planets. So we're not going to be using this as a reason to interfere. And the that's why they said we called the Green Lantern Corps in here, because we felt like there's anybody who should be doing some kind of space policing, it's the Green Lantern Corps. And Toma Ray is kind of like, we got a lot on our plate. He gave us a very cop answer, to be honest. It was very, very much a, file a police report and maybe we'll get to it kind of situation. And that was kind of seeing kind of the politics amongst the Justice League, the New Gods, and the Green Lantern Corps. I thought was fascinating. The Green Lantern Corps mentioning how they had run-ins with Apocalypse and Granny Goodness, things that we had not seen at this point. So, very fascinating stuff. What did you make of that part of this episode?
I thought it was. I mean, I would say I thought it was pretty interesting. We got some interesting dialogue with, like you said, seeing some of the just the relationship between the Justice League and the Green Lantern Corps and the New Gods, and you kind of understand all sides, which I always like that in a story. You can understand every perspective. I understand the New Guy's perspective of, this is a tenuous relationship. We're not about to start this war again for you, essentially. You understand the Justice League's perspective of, we need help, and these people who are supposedly your adversaries are causing a lot of mayhem for us, and we need your help. You should help us, basically, right? And then the Green Lantern Corps kind of just being like, look, we're not going to get in the middle of this. Now there's like you said, there's a lot of other stuff going on. For us to jump into something that seems to be kind of more subterfuge, not like some kind of full out assault, that we should just jump into. So I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was well written.
Yeah, and you had the line from Rocket where she's like, you guys are running away from a fight, and Orion's like, that's not a fight you should welcome. That's not a fight that you want with Darkseid and Apocalypse. And it speaks to, again, kind of just an interesting kind of outlook on just like superheroing and galaxy saving kind of work. We're so used to superheroes saying, we got to go and bring the fight to the bad guy or whatever. But here you have these beings that have, do indeed have peace between these two worlds that are very close together, that could go off in a never ending war that could create great havoc for the whole universe and the galaxy, and them saying like, nah, we're not, like, if we could find a different way to not engage with these lunatics, we're gonna do that. And sorry, like, you know, human trafficking is sad, but what, like, there's bigger fish to fry, so to speak, than that. And seeing, again, those juxtapositions, kind of, you know, go across, was interesting. And then again, hearing Tomo Ray, be again very cop like in his answers to Rocket before seeking assistance. He's like, we'll see what we can do, but we're policing a whole galaxy, and we don't work for the Justice League. I did like the dialogue of like, why the hell are there 3 Green Lanterns on Earth anyway? Like, shouldn't y'all got
Yeah.
plenty of people to deal with this? And Kilowog was like, there's something weird with Earth and its circumstances as to why, they're great candidates to be Green Lanterns. So this was a pretty, I thought, all pretty interesting stuff. The episode ends with Saturn Girl and Chameleon Boy, telling about Bart the story, and Bart's like, all right, say no more, and he introduces us to the cosmic treadmill, and this essentially will, I assume, be their way to track down Lor-Zod, or potentially even go back into the past and change things. Who knows what will happen here, but the possibilities are endless with where this could end up going. So now that we're here, Sham, what do you make of where this next step is for not just the stuff happening on New Genesis, but now with the Legion and Bart?
It looks like we're gonna get more time travel. Um, yeah, honestly, it's hard to even predict where they're gonna go from here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Superboy and Zod are gonna General Zod are gonna jump into this at some point. Um, I mean, we know Lor-Zod and Malafak are still plotting and working and stuff. So it's there's a lot going on. So, but it's cool that they have the cosmic treadmill. This seems like one of those kind of almost like a comic book story that's kind of just going all over the place. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to see whatever they do next.
I am as well. I am as well, and I'm happy to see Bart kind of be put very much into this story. It makes it, like, of course they did a great job of explaining it, but him being a time traveler himself and understanding the time stream and understanding uh, you know the multiverse, he was a great candidate to be put in here. So I'm curious to see how this ends up going. We didn't get anything from. No, what's fascinating to me, Sharon, because we're not, what, 2 episodes into this arc, and of course we have a third
Mm.
episode coming up this Thursday, and you assume this will be probably a 4 episode arc, as most of them have been. This story is getting very expansive and very kind of wide ranging. We're setting up for our guy, or at least my guy, Nightwing, of course, to be the final arc. Do you feel like this almost feels almost above his head once we get to Nightwing? We're talking about New Gods. We're talking about Apocalypse. We're talking about now the Zods and time travel. Like, they're gonna have to tie this story together, and I'm wondering if Nightwing will be the right vehicle for that, or if Nightwing's arc will really feel like a Nightwing arc. Like, I would argue, and that's one thing I wanted to mention real quick, was I don't know if this arc necessarily feels as much like a Rocket arc at this point. It almost just feels like Rocket's the vehicle to kind of tell this larger story that they're trying to get to. But I wonder if Nightwing may get that same treatment in the next arc moving forward.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. I definitely feel like this arc is gonna bleed a lot into whatever the next one is,
Yeah,
and yeah, I don't know. I think Nightwing is gonna play a significant role. I would imagine. Um, I would think that he'd have a more significant role than Rocket does so far, at least
yeah,
in this arc, just because um, Nightwing has been kind of like a main character for the show for quite a while.
yeah.
He was one of the first characters, one of the first main characters. So as Robin, So I think they're gonna give him more like the Aqualad Aquaman treatment.
Right.
I would think, but I don't know what that'll look like. So I agree. This is looking very cosmic, very much like a more of a quite frankly a Superman, Superboy uh, issue than a Batman, Bat Family, Nightwing issue. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see for sure.
A big fight is set up for New Genesis though. Lor-Zod is there. We know what they're there for. Apparently, Metron, who I guess we've not seen the last of, has the last Phantom Zone projector that could eventually get the Zods out of their imprisonment. Will Superboy and Zod potentially be? That's me. That's my last question to you, Shem. Do you think Superboy and Zod will be freed within this arc? Because I mean, Zod, that's where Lore is there. Lore is there to get the Phantom Projector. So I assume that if I assume that we're gonna get a resolution to whether or not these guys are gonna get freed from the Phantom Projector from New Genesis in these next few episodes. Do you feel like that will happen?
I think they will.
I get the feeling they will too.
Yeah, I think they will. I think there's enough time for that.
Yeah, and I also feel like they will too because kind of like how you mentioned, I feel like this new because of just the nature of the how this season is set up, and almost would make more sense if Nightwing is with Superboy in the Legion, and maybe he's leading a larger team against Zod and his and his old conglomerate, or Zod and Apocalypse, and I mean you could end up seeing a major big fight leading up into that finale if Nightwing's kind of one of the leaders of that, being of course the leader of the team, of course a major member of the Justice League. That would make maybe more sense for him moving forward. So, man, I love this episode. Let's get to scores here, Sham. What did you make of episode 19 of Young Justice? This episode being Encounter Upon the Razor's Edge.
I thought it was a very solid episode. I give it an 8.5. I thought it was a
Okay.
very solid episode. Very good episode. Um, a lot of exposition, a lot of
Yeah.
backstory and stuff, which is good. It was good exposition. So it wasn't just kind of just words. Like it was very good exposition.
Yeah.
So you had some action in the end, some drama mixed in. So I thought it was good. So I give it an 8.5.
Yeah, I'm going 9.5. I think that this was one of the best Young Justice episodes we've had at least since the return. I think. Um, Number one, now I think that my 9.5 is biased. I will put that out there because I really enjoyed the Green Lantern animated series. I even though I finished it, or if I did, it was a long time ago. But I love the Razor character. Like I like everything that they introduced in this season. And I love the idea of this canon being continued because that show was prematurely cut. It should still be on TV in my opinion, or at least should have got more seasons than the one season that we got. And how they executed that was brilliant, and it was authentic because you had Jim Craig and John Carlo Volpe working on it. So they wrote this story. They helped develop that show, so it made sense that this came across so well. And then I thought the Zod Legionnaire stuff all came together really nicely and moved us forward with a solution that made sense, which was including Bart, having him make a cosmic treadmill. And I even thought the jokes about how we took 3 months to get these pieces together, and this guy, put it together in 10 minutes. Is like, yeah, sometimes you're a prisoner to your own abilities, and Bart has these special abilities to be super fast and think smart, think quickly, and be from the future. So yes, he's able to make a cosmic treadmill pretty fast if you give him all the
Right.
proper stuff. So everything just came together really nicely. It's gonna be a tough act to follow, episode 20. But I don't think I'll be honest. I don't think they're gonna have a problem. I think this next episode is gonna go crazy as well, and then we're gonna be set up for pretty crazy final 6 episodes of this season. So it's been a fun ride so far. Hope you guys are enjoying the ride. I know we were pretty good early on with getting these reviews out a little quicker. We've been a little bit sidetracked with a bunch of different stuff, but we'll probably be on track in the next week or so, getting these out there a little more quicker, closer to the episode when they release. But thank you guys so much for checking out this edition of our Young Justice episode recap and review. Make sure you guys leave a comment about what you thought about this episode, whether you agreed or disagreed with some of the takes that me and Shamari had on this episode. Make sure you give us a like as well and a subscription to the channel, New Generation Media. That's going to do it for now. Thank you guys for checking us out. For Shamari, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.